Hey, everybody. Welcome to FL Teams Live. We're glad to have you. FL Teams Live. We're here every Wednesday to talk about the latest and greatest news, especially if it involves our beloved Florida teams. FLTeams.com is a top Florida sports source. Tremendous coverage. Follow FL Teams everywhere you get your sports news, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Wherever you're watching this, make sure you're subscribed to FL Teams. And we've got a sponsor for this here episode, Jeremiah.
As always, if you're familiar with FL Teams, then you know we're talking about our sponsor, Symbol. It's the stock market for sports that basically allows you to trade your sports teams like they're stocks. You can earn cash payouts when your team wins. Symbol is blended sports in the stock market. It offers a new way to invest and profit off your sports knowledge. Use your knowledge to buy low, sell high, earn cash payouts anytime your team wins. So join the already 6,000 plus early adopters who have started to profit off of their sports knowledge. You can visit www.symbol.com. Check the link that's scrolling through for us. When you go on, make sure when you open your account to use the promo code FLTeams. That'll get you a $10 deposit bonus to help build your portfolio. They've got some great things going on for March Madness as well. Go over, check them out, let them know FL Teams sent
you. Thank you, Jeremiah, and thank you, Symbol. We are here quickly to introduce everyone. He is often referred to as the Kim Kardashian of TikTok, as Jeremiah Hensley. We have Andrew Eshman. If he were a wide receiver, Trent Baalke would probably be paying him $23 million a year from the Jag Roar podcast. Andrew Eshman joins us. And there's me. I host. My name's Jeff Macolino. I host Bolts and Bats in the Bay, which is a podcast here on FL Teams. You also might know me as the guy who's getting drunk at the bar when you're trying to get an early lunch. Anyways, let's kick off this NFL free agency breakdown. And let's start with the news that kind of kicked everything off. Tom Brady was around his wife and children for almost 2 months before he said, "Screw this! I'm a terrible father. I'm going to go play football." Tom Brady hoping his year, his pact with Satan extends another year. He returns to the Buccaneers. Well, Jeremiah, let's start with you. How terrible of a husband and father is Tom Brady?
One PTA meeting, right? And I'm out. I don't get it all the way around. Like, if there's ever anyone who should be able to enjoy retirement, it's Tom Brady. I mean, you've literally done everything that can be done in this sport. You have a supermodel wife. I just walk away. But it reminds me, dude, always, like every job I've worked at, there's always been one dude who was really, really good at the job early on. But now he's like in his 70s or 80s, and he's not doing as well. But he just hangs on because he's always been there, right? It's like Brady refuses to walk away. And I mean, I would say, you run the risk of tarnishing your legacy, but I don't think that's possible. I mean, the guy could have a horrible season next year, and he's still going to be Tom Brady. So I'm just glad he's out of the AFC East.
Yeah, the NFL couldn't get rid of him, man. They're like, they want that cash cow back.
Yeah, well, I'm infuriated. One of my favorite traditions is the week before the Super Bowl, watching all those 30-minute Super Bowl highlight videos. And they canceled all of those this year on NFL Network to show all of these Tom Brady's greatest hits. And didn't get to watch those. I like watching those with my son because I like spending time with my kids, Tom. But canceled all of that. And then this little guy, big guy, just walks on back and says, "I'm back. Maybe I know you all swooned over me for a month, but hey, I'm back. I just wanted the attention." I hate it. I hate it. Go away with some dignity. Take a year off and come back, and I would respect it way more. Come back with another team, and I'd respect it more if it's just a ploy. But just to it rubs me the wrong way. But this definitely changes the way the Bucks are going to be approaching free agency. They no longer have Kyle Trask. They were in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes allegedly early on before Tom Brady announced his comeback. And the Bucks, they lost a couple players. Ali Marpet retired. Alex Kappa, he signed with Cincinnati. Jordan Whitehead signed with the Jets, but they've got a lot of free agents still pending. Obviously, they franchised Chris Godwin, and they just agreed to an extension with him minutes before we came on. They've re-signed center Ryan Jensen, cornerback, their top corner Carlton Davis. They traded for a guard, Shaq Mason, from the Patriots. I don't know why the Patriots would still be doing business with the Bucks, honestly, but that's another thing. And then they signed Russell Gage, a real sneaky good signing from Atlanta. He's really come on the past couple seasons. Yes. They still have no running backs. Jason Pierre-Paul and Ndamukong Suh, they're free agents. Gronkowski is most likely coming back because he can't do anything without being next to his buddy. He's basically Tom Brady's son that Tom wants to hang out with. So it definitely impacted the way the Bucks are approaching free agency. And presumably they'll try to sling together a bunch of underpaid veterans for one more run.
I think you all got to kind of wonder if Tampa didn't kind of in the back of their head have an idea that this might be happening. I mean, on all of our coaching carousels, we all kept asking, how does Bruce Arians still have a job? If they're blowing this thing up, why is he still there? Maybe the Bucks were just hanging on, waiting on this one to happen either way.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys, do you think that's why Byron Leftwich, that didn't work out with Jacksonville? Because he knew maybe that Tom was coming back for possibly another season.
Could be.
I think it definitely, I think everybody in that organization probably had some sort of idea about it. And now, you talked about not having running backs, but you got to expect that one of the two will resign. Either Fournette or Jones will come back based on Brady being back. There's other dominoes that are out there. I think everybody kind of feels like Deshaun Watson is going to be the big piece that makes everything fall. But outside of that, you still got these guys to come back. If you get a chance to play with Brady and make a run as a free agent, then, it makes it a lot more, I guess, attractive.
Doesn't Fournette owe himself the opportunity to go sign a multi-year deal? It sickens me. He's one of the guys that kind of sickens me with the way he's devalued himself to play with Brady the last couple of years. And I get it. I get chasing a championship and all that. But, doesn't he want to sign a 3-4 year deal? Just get paid. He's got a ring. I don't know. I don't like these mercenary teams. I've ranted and raved about it, many times on these podcasts.
I think so. Fournette's definitely a back who, he showed it in Jacksonville. The year that Jacksonville made a run, he almost single-handedly, it was playoff Lenny, right? He was doing everything. He definitely deserves that sort of shot. I just don't know if he'll take it.
And he had like a bounce back season too in 2019. No one gives him any credit for that. He had like 1,000+ yards rushing, like 500 yards receiving. And, then they kind of mysteriously released him, which I thought was stupid. I would have let him play out as last year. And then you have, James Robinson there. Can you imagine that duo? That would be nasty.
That would be filthy. I've always loved that Fournette's not just a bruiser, but he's got really good hands. He runs good routes. The guy's a receiver too. And again, big time players make big time plays, and usually when it counts in big games, you can count on them being there for you. The Godwin re-signing, I'm sure coming to terms on that's probably going to give them some cap space. So they had to free something up there, taking the franchise off of him. So I think the Bucks are probably still going to be pretty active.
Yeah, I would agree. And let's use a cheap segue here. Speaking of Leonard Fournette, his former team has been very active in free agency. Andrew, I'll kind of let you take the reins here and talk about Jacksonville. They've been spending a lot of money.
Yeah, the theme of this discussion for me could be cha-ching, right? Because that is what we've been doing all week. Obviously, the Christian Kirk signing, huge. I mean, massive deal, and we're screwing up the whole wide receiver market, right? Like now, everybody's going to be asking for crazy money because Christian Kirk got $72 million, 3-year deal. Insane. I mean, I think he's a good wide receiver. But a lot of Jaguars fans are still concerned that we may not have our number one guy. I think a lot of fans wanted Allen Robinson to come back and be our number one guy. So now we're talking about possibly taking a wide receiver at 33 in the draft, possibly. And my only issue with that is the wide receiver room just is so crowded right now. We have Laviska Shenault, we have Marvin Jones Jr., we have Christian Kirk, we have Zay Jones from the Raiders who we signed, and I'm kind of trying to wrap my head around that signing and how he's going to fit in. But apparently he did pretty well with Derek Carr. I mean, he's a hard worker and he's got some good tape. So it'll be exciting, but man, we did spend a lot as opposed to last year in free agency where we didn't do anything. I mean, it was very lackluster, but now we seems to be having a good free agency. I like the Brad Sheriff signing at guard. He's getting good money, getting big money, but I think that he's a very athletic player. I mean, he can pull, he can get downfield, get to the second level, make those blocks. I guess the only issue is, can he stay healthy? I mean, that's been his big problem. I don't think he's played a full season since 2016. So, but we plugged the hole at guard, and on the defensive side of the ball too, we made some good choices there. We got a guy from Atlanta, middle linebacker, Olakun, who was leading the league in tackles last year. So that'll be nice, especially since we lost Miles Jack. Even though Olakun doesn't play weak side, that'll be someone that'll be a position that we might have to fill in the draft. But yeah, and then we got Darius Williams from LA. That's huge for us at the corner spot. So I think we'll have hopefully our two good corners, Tyson Campbell and Darius Williams. So I'm excited. I mean, I think there's a lot of potential for this season, and we'll see what happens. But we definitely spent some money. I think we might still be 13 million. We might still have 13 million in space before the rookie contracts, before the draft. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Hopefully we don't go over, but the salary cap's not real anyways, guys, right?
No, I'm a Saints fan. I can vouch for that.
Yeah. Look, people always talk about like having Bill Gates money, when you start talking about, or Bezos money. We need to start talking about having Khan money. I mean, like I'm a wrestling fan as well. I mean, Shad Khan's little son goes out and just buys a promotion and scoops up every wrestler that's ever been cut from the WWE, just throwing cash. And Pops, not to be outdone, is doing the exact same thing on the free agent market. Like, man, you mentioned that crowded wide receiver room. What's the vision for Christian Kirk? I mean, did you really pay a number 2 guy like a top 3 receiver in the league? Like, yeah. His contract's insane.
It is. And now, I mean, can you imagine what Devontae Adams is going to ask for? I mean, he may just buy a whole team, right? He may just become the owner of whatever team he goes to. But no, I agree with you. It's up in the air whether Kirk is going to be able to be the number 1 guy. Then you have Marvin Jones Jr. I mean, how's that kind of going to work out with Kirk? I mean, I both see them as like, number 2 guys, in my opinion. I would have had, Robinson, Allen Robinson as the number 1, or so it'll be interesting. I think I don't know why we would draft another wide receiver. I mean, I guess we're looking for the number 1 guy, but we're going to have to trade Shenault. I mean, we're going to have to move somebody out of that wide receiver room. And I think if anybody, it's going to be Shenault. So,
and you also added. Now, I'm not a fan of this one. Not. That's a double negative. Because it's only a 1-year deal. But you also signed Evan Ingram, who's a tight end, but he kind of plays like a receiver. So
Yeah.
it seems to me like, and I understand they're trying to get Trevor Lawrence weapons. It seems like they're getting him like the generic brand of like, instead of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, he's got the karate kicking gators or something. It's like the off-brand. Christian Kirk is getting an incredible amount of money. He's never had a 1,000-yard season. And I get it. This is the kind of signing that if he does, hook up with Lawrence and puts together a bunch of 1,000-yard seasons, we look like idiots for making fun of, the Jaguars for signing him. Which I guess you hope that's the case, Andrew. But
yeah, I hope. I hope he has kind of like he surprises us like Dan Arnold or the tight end we got from the CJ Henderson trade. I'm hoping maybe it's one of those situations. Yeah. We'll see what happens there. I don't know. The jury's still out on it. I mean, but I do agree. They went for the I don't want to say Kia is bad, but the Kia instead of the Lexus or the Mercedes, right?
Look, I'll give you this though. Doug Peterson, if you look at that Eagles team that won the Super Bowl, there wasn't like a scream out loud number one receiver on that roster. Right? No. I mean, there wasn't. There were a bunch of pieces of guys who were together, but you didn't have the one guy. So it's kind of, I think Peterson's been used to running an offense in that sense.
Did they have Deshaun, I think, when they won the Super Bowl, or that? I don't think he was.
No, he wasn't because he came back. Yeah.
I think Alshon Jeffrey was their number one guy. I mean, who I would say is better than anyone the Jaguars currently have. But, yeah, and Zay Jones, again, he had a good year for the Raiders, kind of a little resurgence because he was kind of a bust. But again, it's a 3-year, $24 million, max value $30 million. Just seems like a lot of money being thrown around. And again, yeah, we said the salary cap's kind of a myth. We don't know how these deals are structured. Christian Kirk, they may have an out after 2-3 years where they don't end up paying him that much money if he's a bust. And I don't think he'll be a bust. I just think the way you're paying him, you're expecting him to be a top 5 or 10 wide receiver in the NFL. And I've seen no evidence that he has that in him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think he has potential. It's definitely a risk. I mean, it's definitely one of the riskiest signings, I think. But he's a hard worker, Christian Kirk. I mean, he kind of learned a lot, I feel like, from Larry Fitzgerald, who was over there in Arizona, Hall of Fame wide receiver. So hopefully he delivers in Jacksonville.
I feel like every year he's a guy that gets talked about like he's on the cusp. Everybody, I mean, like, again, I'll go from a fantasy football perspective. It's always that one dude in the room that, like, Christian Kirk, it's his year, right? It's always on the tip of everybody's tongue. So maybe it is just a chance to actually get free away from the Fitzgeralds, away from the Hopkins, and be the guy.
Yeah. I hope so. I definitely hope so.
Yeah. Well, I think the Jaguars have been the second most active team in free agency. So let's talk about who I believe is the most active team in free agency now. Obviously, that's our third Florida team that we haven't talked about yet. The Miami Dolphins. Jeremiah, I'll let you take the lead on this, but they have been not really huge money deals, but they have been very busy. Even, again, minutes before we went live, they were making a signing, and they probably signed another guy since we went live. I'll have to check on Twitter to see what's going on. But Jeremiah, walk me through. I know you gave a little bit of a recap a couple days ago, but even since then, there's been more.
Look, I like everything about what we're doing. If you caught some of the playoff stuff that EJ and I were doing on here, we kept kind of talking about how the Rams, they had like those big pieces, but when you looked underneath it, the Rams, what made them special were those middle of the pack guys, the guys they drafted in like the 3rd through the 5th or 6th round that were these key pieces, right? They weren't giant names, but they were big pieces. So what I love about McDaniel was, one, we've kept the defense together. by re-signing Agba, brought back a Landon Roberts, Duke Riley, who helps on the special teams, Nick Needham, all those guys that were a piece of the defense. He's brought them back together, and then kept most of the defensive coaching staff, right? So I like that there's an offensive guy coming in that doesn't have the ego of, I'm going to blow this all up and do it my way. He sees a unit that was functioning well, and he leaves it together with coaches, and he signs the key pieces that are there. I think again, they were good players, and the defense was good enough to be a playoff team. And second, I think you gain some respect and trust from the other players in the locker room when you do that, right? And then you got, franchise tagging Gesicki. I'm all about that. I didn't really see better tight end option out there. I'm also a little bit intrigued to see if there's a little bit of George Kittle in Gesicki, if he can be used that way. I don't think he's as physical as Kittle, but he's definitely a great receiver. And then when you talk about the signings, man, we go out and get Chase Edmonds, who I think is sneaky underrated. I don't know how or why the guy can't seem to truly take over a first, like a lead back role. He always ends up splitting or carrying it out. But, I mean, you're talking, this guy averaged almost 5 yards a carry last year, and he catches the ball. And then you bring in Raheem Mostert, who absolutely is familiar with Mike McDaniel, the Shanahan system, the way that they run the ball. I'm a big fan. And you still got your running back room with Gaskin and Ahmed. Sad thing is with these running back signings, it doesn't look good for the hometown boy. I don't think Duke Johnson's going to be sticking around. So that's done. Also on the offensive end, getting Cedric Wilson, I think, is another under the radar. He's been behind the receivers in Dallas, but always sparked. He's a guy who gets separation. He has great yards after the catch. Again, sort of a Shanahan / Mike McDaniel staple. I wasn't crazy about Preston Williams re-signing him. I've been burnt, man. I mean, Preston Williams looks great in training camp. He's going to be the guy's physically everything that you could hope for, and then he comes up small. So I wonder about those. Signing a fullback, which I didn't know that they still existed in the NFL. But
not many of them.
I know. Well, I was reading something about Alec Ingold that they brought in, and they were like, he was the third best fullback in blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, third out of 5, maybe? Like, how many fullbacks?
Top 60%.
Yeah, but again, good blocker and catches the ball out of the backfield. Connor Williams, we needed upgrades across the board on the line. Connor Williams last year was uncharacteristic. He had something like 15 or 16 penalties. Prior to that, in the prior 3 seasons, he had 16 combined. But he gave up 1 sack. I felt like there were games last year where Liam Eichenberg held 15 times and he still gave up 5 sacks. So I'll take the guy who's getting a penalty as an upgrade on that. Love Teddy Bridgewater. I think that is a huge move because Tua, no matter how much one wants to slice it one way or the other, he has shown that he misses time with injury. And last year, having Jacoby Brissett to plug into that hole, that cost us games, flat out. And I think Teddy Bridgewater is very similar. As Jeff, we were joking about before coming on the air, we made sure to go get another quarterback who can't throw it over 10 yards. That way we don't have to change the offense. So I like all those. I hate losing Mac Hollins. Mac Hollins to me was a big piece of, he was heart to the Dolphins. Special teams player, came up big, made big catches late, but they replaced him with Kean Crossan coming over from the Giants, who was a key special teams player. So we're plugging that back in. For me, I feel like this offseason's kind of shown me right away the identity of what we're going to be. And it's not hiding it. It's not secretive. McDaniel did everything he could to bring in coaches of the offensive line because we need to run the ball. He's been a run game coordinator and specialist everywhere he's been. You bring in Chase Edmonds, you bring in Mostert, and then you're an offensive guy, so you leave the defense alone and just sign the pieces that are coming back. So far, so good for me, man. I would still love, as I said in my little video, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'd love for Jarvis Landry to come home. Just don't see it happening. But so far, man, I think all of these little moves are solid and none of them are high risk. We don't have a Will Fuller that we just gave $10 million to guaranteed, right? These are all good, easy contracts to deal with, and it still leaves us space to keep moving on maybe hopefully a couple of these offensive linemen.
Jeremiah, I was mad when you guys tagged Gesicki.
Me too.
Because honestly, I think the Jags should have gone after him if he hadn't been tagged. I also wanted Ertz as well. So I'm a little upset about that. But do you think Gaskin's the number one running back for you guys, right? Or
1A, he would start it, but then you get Ahmed was coming in some. Duke Johnson took carries. They always said they want him to be number one, but I don't think he's got the cut for it. So I think it's a wide open as to who's going to be that guy.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. I individually, I like every move. By the way, the way to turn Gesicki into George Kittle, I think, is just a meth addiction. But that's just an observation of George Kittle. But I like all the individual signings for the Dolphins. I do think Teddy Bridgewater is a good backup to have. Frankly, if you asked me to choose between Tua and Teddy as my starter, I would pick Teddy. I think he's more of look, we know what he can and cannot do, but all of these moves to me look like a team that's just trying to be good, not great. I don't know if that makes sense. It's not, and I get it. I was ranting about mercenary teams. So I'm not saying you go sign the splashy free agent, but you've got real limitations at the quarterback position. There's no way to get around that. You don't need to have a top 5 quarterback to win a Super Bowl. The Rams just proved that. The Dolphins have a good defense. They kept it good, top 10 probably. Their offense, they're just going to pound the ball. But I just look at it like this: they've got a juggernaut in their division with the Buffalo Bills. Yes, Isaac puts on a great point here. By the way, if I'm McDaniel, Bridgewater and Tua are in a competition for the starting job.
I hope so. I do. We made that mistake with Tannehill. We never pressed Tannehill. We never brought in anybody to push him. I'd love for it to go into open battle. Win the position. What did
they give Bridgewater? Because I know at one point he was like one of the highest paid backups in the NFL.
1 year, 6.5, fully guaranteed, worth up to $10 million with incentives.
Wow.
So a relatively high paid backup. The Saints he was the highest paid backup when he was with the Saints, and that was a year Drew Brees went down with a thumb injury, and he went 5-0 stepping in for him. So I mean, he's proven his value as a backup quarterback. Frankly, more than he has as a starting quarterback, unfortunately. He's a smart guy. Everyone loves Teddy Bridgewater. I've yet to meet a single person, fan or teammate who talks about him who does not have glowing reviews to say about Teddy Bridgewater. So he will always have a job in the NFL as long as he wants to play. Frankly, I'm surprised. Now, I know he's from Miami, so that maybe had something to do with it. But someone's trying to mess with me in the comments. I'm sorry. I see you, Jameson. But I'm surprised he didn't wait for the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes to wrap up to see if Jameis Winston is the only, I would say, accepted starting quarterback who's out there in free agency. You've got Mariota. I don't know. I think Teddy Bridgewater or Marcus Mariota is kind of a toss-up personally, depending on the style of offense you want to run. If you want, a little bit of run mixed in, you go with Mariota. If you want short, a short passing game, you go with Teddy. So I'm kind of surprised he jumped at signing with the Dolphins so early. That was my biggest shock, is a lot of the dominoes haven't fallen in this free agency sweepstakes because Deshaun Watson is holding everyone hostage. So I'm kind of surprised Teddy just went ahead and agreed with the Dolphins this early.
Who knows what that conversation was, though? I mean, publicly you're going to say you're behind Tua, but maybe he's coming in with the understanding it's an open competition. I don't know, if Bridgewater's coming in under that or if he's not. But what's funny, Jeff, is I agree with you. We're making moves to be good, not great. But our offense just needs to be good. It was god awful. If we can just make the offense good, the defense can carry its weight the rest of the way through.
But have they done enough to catch Buffalo? And let's not even just say Buffalo. You've got New England. They were a playoff team. I know they weren't, head and shoulders above Miami. But they were a playoff team with a quarterback who presumably with a year of experience gets better. They've got two teams ahead of them. Lucky for the Dolphins, they do have the Jets in the division. But the Saints and Bucks have the Falcons. You guys have the Jets. So there's always one team, right? I don't want to talk about who it is in the AFC South.
I knew you were going to do that.
Yeah.
But have the Dolphins made moves that catch them up to the Bills or even the Patriots?
Patriots, I say, yeah. I mean, we handled them pretty well last year. The Patriots, I think we're right in that same league with Buffalo. I was not a happy guy to see Von Miller sign with Buffalo. I could have done without that. In one of the Miami Dolphins groups that I'm in, as soon as that signing was announced, there was just a meme that went up that was like, great, now we need 10 offensive linemen. So I don't know, man. I've got an inside perspective, so I get soft at heart on this. I think we can absolutely contend for a wild card. I don't think we've overtaken Buffalo yet. I don't know. From the outside looking in, Andrew, what do you think?
I think you definitely have a team that you're going to be contenders. I really like your secondary. I mean, you have what's that? Is it Byron Jones and the other? Oh my gosh, why am I blanking on his name?
You got Xavier. Yeah,
Xavier Howard. Yeah, who I thought the Jaguars should have picked up at one point. But yeah, you guys have good corners. Defense is good. You're gonna play that smash mouth football, like you said, Shanahan. You guys got a fullback too. I missed the days when we had a good fullback and we went to the AFC championship game. So we'll see. I mean, I think you guys are going to be contenders though. Teddy Bridgewater, he's going to win you games. That's the bottom line. And like you said, he's going to help push Tua. It's going to be an interesting training camp. Just watching those two guys kind of battle it out. But yeah, I think it's good for Tua at the end of the day too.
100%.
Shout out to Big E. Thanks for listening.
Hey,
Big E, not Biggie.
Yeah. Hey, you know what though? You said that good for Tua. Fitzpatrick was good for Tua. They had a good relationship. Tua is a hardworking kid. He seems to buy into instruction. So having a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, who some might say, Jeff, has the same limitations that Tua does and has managed to survive in this league for a while, it's not going to hurt to have that guy in his ear and in the QB room every week.
Yeah, he's not going to make mistakes that lose games, although I would argue he maybe did that a few times in Denver last year. But when he was in New Orleans, again, he started 5 games. The offense was one of those games I was at in Jacksonville. The Saints won 13-6. He just didn't make mistakes. He didn't need to light up the scoreboard. The defense took care of it. And I think the Dolphins have a similar philosophy of just don't make mistakes. Keep drives going as much as you can. We don't need to score touchdowns on every play. Just try to pick up 4 or 5 yards every play. And eventually the defense will, bail us out.
Yeah, what's it? Defense wins championships, right? So
defense in a running game, man.
Yeah, that's why you don't want Eli Apple on your defense. So let's shift to just looking in the divisions here, and we've obviously just talked about the AFC East. Let's talk about the AFC South. The Titans won that division. They were the 1 seed, but they certainly aren't a giant that really scares, I don't think, anybody. The Colts were a team that should have made the playoffs, but you know what they did the last week against the Jags.
The clown show.
The Texans, who we don't. The Texans are the weird team because when they trade Deshaun Watson, we don't know what they're getting back. Davis Mills obviously looked good last year, but we don't, is Baker Mayfield going to be included in a trade? Is he better than Davis Mills? I assume Matt Ryan is not someone they would want in a trade. That's a weird. Atlanta with Matt Ryan is a really weird situation right now, I'd say. But regardless, have the Jaguars made moves where they can compete in the AFC South?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the defense, we beefed up the D line a little bit. We got this guy from the Jets, Foley Fakutazi, I think that's how you say it. So we were beefing up the defensive line there. We have that guy Olaquan, who flies around the field. So I think that's going to be good because our linebacking core was just not good last year. As you heard, probably Miles Jack got released. He's going over to Pittsburgh of all places, a team that we embarrassed. So now I got to listen. Now I got to be heckled by all my Pittsburgh fans or Pittsburgh friends rather. So that'll be fun. But yeah, I think our secondary is probably going to be a lot better too. We have Tyson Campbell, who was a rookie who we drafted out of Georgia. He played pretty well the second half of the season. He was kind of thrown into the fire, made some adjustments with a dumpster fire coaching staff, Urban Meyer. So if you can be successful in that kind of setup, and then you have an actual legit coach that comes in, Doug Peterson, I think the team's going to look just remarkably better. You have Mike Caldwell, who we got as our defensive coordinator from Tampa Bay. I think is going to do a good job, revamp this defense. So I think we're definitely going to be contenders. I'm not worried about the Titans. I don't know. Ryan Tannehill to me is just kind of underwhelming as a quarterback. Jeremiah, you know a little bit about that, right?
That's what RT17 does. He underwhelms.
Yeah, I'm underwhelmed. He can run around a little bit, so you have to have good outside contain. But yeah, I'm not really worried about the Titans. I think it's just you have to be able to shut down Derrick Henry, and if you take him out of the picture, I think the Titans become kind of that one-trick pony.
It's the Jaguars are one of those teams I could see even winning the division. One of the many teams who are just thanking God right now they're not in the AFC West.
Yeah,
that division.
That would be trouble.
Crazy. Jacksonville to me is absolutely interesting because of what you mentioned going into this, Jeff. The other teams within that division, they all have their own question marks right now. I mean, even though they had positive pieces, they're way more in question than Jacksonville is. You don't know who the quarterback's going to be in Houston. You really don't know who it's going to be in Indianapolis, right?
Not at all.
And then in Tennessee, they just released Julio Jones. They can't find anybody to go across from A.J. Brown, and you're still strapped with Tannehill, which, is a managing of the game. But again, if you don't have to cover somebody outside of A.J. Brown, and you can stack the box, then they can be beaten. And then for me, I like the young sort of unknown. If we look back at like what we consider to be great quarterbacks, the Peyton Mannings, right? He's the first one that comes to my mind. Even Troy Aikman back in the day. They struggled mightily their first year. There was also a really big jump in year 2. And I think Trevor Lawrence has the possibility of doing that. Doug Peterson made Carson Wentz keep getting contracts. People keep signing Carson Wentz because of Doug Peterson. And you don't know what you're going to have with Travis Etienne. Is he going to be able to split out like a receiver? What's he going to bring to the game? Is it going to be Deebo Samuel-like? I like the Ingram signing at tight end. I think, again, when that guy's healthy, he makes plays. He's a tough cover. So I think there's a lot of interesting pieces there. And James Robinson's going to be way more involved now that Urban Meyer – I still don't know what Urban Meyer had against James Robinson. But so I think they're very interesting in that division.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell Urban was thinking, benching, James Robinson, a diamond in the rough, pretty much, 1,000-yard rushing, season the year before that, and an undrafted free agent. Like, where do you find that? Like, let me know where you find that, because it's pretty hard to find.
The Trevor Lawrence is going to improve from the sole reason. Obviously, he's athletically gifted. We've seen him in college. We've seen him even flash in the NFL. Not as much maybe as a lot of people would have liked, but he has a coach who's more interested in winning football games than finding co-eds after the game this year. I think that's going to be a big benefit to Trevor Lawrence in his second season. Just a hunch. I don't know.
Yeah, you're really going out on a limb there, Jeff.
And then watch, if this all happens, Christian Kirk is going to be Cooper Kupp. He's going to lead the league in receptions. We're all going to eat our words.
Well, I just thought the Jaguars just proactively went out and signed all the wide receivers so the Titans couldn't replace Julio. So.
Hey, that's that con money, buddy. That's that con money.
Know your enemy.
we want to take all the wide receivers and then make it so you can't sign anybody. Yeah.
Nobody has wide receivers except for us. We're not going to be that bad.
You own the trade market.
Yeah.
Speaking of a glut of wide receivers, the Bucs have an embarrassment of riches. Evans, who's good unless Marshawn Lattimore's covering him. Godwin, who's good all the time, and Russell Gage, who's really coming on. I'm almost surprised he signed on to be a number 3 receiver. I think he could have gotten the Bucs are going to use 3 receivers a lot. So it's not that he won't have a chance to see the field, but I'm kind of surprised he didn't look for maybe a bigger opportunity for targets. Regardless, the Bucs were in the division that had no quarterbacks, a week ago. Yeah, I mean, now obviously that's somewhat disrespectful to Matt Ryan, but Matt Ryan is, the guy who blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl. So there's that. Taysom Hill is a tight end playing quarterback. He was the king of the division quarterbacks, I would say, until Tom Brady decided to, leave his family to come play with, a game. Now the Bucs division, though, it's almost impossible to talk about because 3 of the 4 teams that we're visiting with Deshaun Watson are in the NFC South. Cleveland being the other, and all the reports I've been seeing are that it's between Atlanta and New Orleans, his hometown Atlanta and New Orleans, where he can actually win. What's he going to choose? So the NFC South whole landscape is going to be interesting because presumably, and I don't want to gloss over all of the off the field issues, but for this podcast purposes, let's just look at it from a football perspective. I obviously understand the substantial issues and, as a Saints fan, I'm very conflicted myself if he becomes the quarterback. But that's moving that all aside. This is there's no doubt I would say he was a clear top 5 quarterback before he took a year off. Who, if gets traded into the NFC South, the Bucs are going to be battling this guy for a decade and a half, probably. This is a monumental, groundbreaking type move in the NFL. I don't want to overstate it, but it really is. He's probably never going to be available again. Quarterbacks typically they'll get re-signed. They'll get, they'll figure out ways to keep him, whichever team gets him, assuming he keeps clean off the field, of course. It's an interesting, it's interesting because whichever team gets him, you would think becomes, well, that's the team the Bucs are going to be battling for the number one spot. The Saints obviously have a great defense. They have Michael Thomas coming back, Alvin Kamara. They were not traded to the Commanders. Clearly the best situation for Deshaun Watson if he wants to win, but he might want to go home and play in front of 72 fans in the Atlanta stadium with a closed Chick-fil-A on game days. Are the Bucs, again, I guess it's too early is what this whole diatribe is about, is that it's too early to say, are the Bucs the clear favorites? Because Deshaun Watson's going to be a wrecking ball in this division, whichever team he picks, unless he picks the Browns. Do you think the Bucs, with their holes, are a clear front runner in the NFC South, or do you think, again, the Saints get Deshaun Watson with all those weapons and that defense that has had no problem shutting down Brady over the past couple of years? Are they, are they the top teams in the NFC potentially?
I think the Saints situation is the only one that would scare me, really. Because if I look at the shape that Atlanta's in right now and the shape that Carolina's in, those teams would be no better than the teams that Deshaun Watson went 5-11 with. Plain and simple. I mean, the talent-wise isn't going to be any better. And, I mean, Deshaun Watson went 5-11 when he was putting up Pro Bowl numbers and was a top-5 quarterback in the NFL. It'd be interesting to see him with weapons around him, and I think New Orleans is interesting. That's a scary thought. And Cleveland is, too. I mean, if he ends up in Cleveland with Amari Cooper, and then the running game that they have, between Chubb and Kareem Hunt, I mean, that gives you all that you can do. I don't think, Carolina or Atlanta become automatic contenders just by putting him on the roster. I think New Orleans
does. Let me ask you this, because here's the other factor in this with Deshaun Watson. Atlanta has Matt Ryan, who, again, has his issues, but I would take him over Tua or Teddy, to be quite frank. What kind of market opens? Obviously, Jameis Winston is probably the top free agent. I think the reason he's in a holding pattern right now is because I think he's obvious to go back to the Saints if Deshaun Watson goes elsewhere. Baker Mayfield sounds like even if they don't get Watson, he might want out. Matt Ryan's been quiet. Kudos to him, but he's got to be pissed off too that a team he's been the quarterback of for, I think this would be like his 15th season or something, is rolling out the red carpet for someone who, again, he does have his issues off the field. Matt Ryan has been seemingly a real good guy, and he's done his best. He's got his limitations, mainly, his play at quarterback. But you've got a lot of dominoes really hanging on this Deshaun Watson thing. Do you think do you think the Dolphins entertain another quarterback in the scenario that Baker and or Matt Ryan shake loose?
I can't see it. I mean, McDaniel went so far out of his way to plant the flag on Tua, and I think the organization, Stephen Ross and Greer, saw what they saw in Tua, so they want to give it a year where they feel like he's being supported. I'll give you a flip side on Matt Ryan, man. Maybe Matt Ryan's being all quiet because he's looking at Matt Stafford raising up a Super Bowl trophy from going to a team that was contending, and he's realizing that if Deshaun comes into Atlanta, Colts still need a quarterback. I mean, if Matt Ryan ends up on the Colts, what does that end up doing to the Colts? Or, I don't think he would be interdivision, but on the Saints, if you get a flip around, I mean, is Matt Ryan looking at that last shot of glory as well? So maybe that's the whole, they said Atlanta's been up front with him, which I think is real cool, right? They just basically told him, they're like, yeah, we're entertaining Deshaun Watson. Like, at least they didn't hold press conferences every week pretending like they weren't. like Miami did for half the season. But what do you think about the quarterback situation in the South, man, in the NFC, Andrew?
Yeah. The Baker Mayfield thing is interesting. Do you see him going to Atlanta? Or possibly going to Atlanta, or maybe, I don't know, Indianapolis maybe, or something? Like that would be an interesting trade. I don't know what the trades would be, but I don't know. Like Atlanta or Indy would be. I could see him probably wanting to go to Indianapolis probably, because I think he's got. I don't know. I feel like he's got a better setup there. With Jonathan Taylor and just the team. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I was kind of mulling that over in my head while you guys were talking about that.
That it makes sense. I think they're kind of lying in the weeds here, as far as, again, there's Jameis, and there's going to be whatever quarterback Deshaun Watson displaces if he goes to Cleveland or Atlanta, that shakes loose. And there's also Jimmy Garoppolo still sitting out there.
Oh yeah, I forgot about him.
So I think they're kind of also in this hostage situation where they just need to know what Deshaun Watson, where he's going, so they can see who we can get. Because obviously Matt Ryan's not going to be his backup. Baker Mayfield's not going to be his backup. It is interesting because I do think, from everything I've been reading and hearing, that Deshaun Watson is going to face a 6 to 8 game suspension. So the only team also, by the way, that I think that could get through that is the Saints with Taysom Hill. Matt Ryan's not going to agree to sit on and be a backup and start the first 6 games of the season for a guy suspended for alleged sexual assault. And nor should he. Same goes with Baker Mayfield. So I think they're kind of waiting to see what shakes down with where he goes, and then they'll make their decision after that. I'm kind of surprised they didn't try to get Watson, honestly.
Baker is really interesting because, even though we saw a small growth in Cleveland, if you're considered to be a quote unquote star in Cleveland and the Browns decide they don't want you, that's hurtful. Jarvis Landry demanded to get out. OBJ demanded to get out. When you're the dude who's like, I'm going to stay in Cleveland, it's like, nah, not really. That's just got to be. And that whole letter that he put out to the city of Cleveland just spoke to that. He was like a brokenhearted middle school girl. It was like Baker's in crisis. I don't see him coming back to Cleveland regardless of what happens. So I think Indianapolis does make a lot of sense. That's interesting. And then you talk about Jimmy G floating around. You forget, but he's still very much in play.
Yeah, well, I think we can all agree. We just want Deshaun Watson to pick his place so that people can start. He's kind of creating a logjam. I know that, for example, the top, a lot of places I've seen, the number one available free agent before free agency opened was the Saints left tackle, Teron Armstead. He's basically openly said, I'm waiting. If Watson goes to the Saints, I'm going to go back to the Saints. Otherwise, I'm taking the most money. That's if the top free agent domino can't fall because he's waiting to see what the quarterback situation is. Just make a decision, Deshaun. Come on. Give us something more to talk about. I was hoping he'd do it during this podcast, but
you got to think about compensation, right? That's really going to be a part of this because Houston still has to be willing to give him up for something.
Well,
they talk about Carolina possibly sending McCaffrey.
So the 4 teams who were able to meet with him, they had to agree to their compensation prior to even getting a meeting. So the common thought is that every team had to offer 3 first-round picks, a good young player, and potentially multiple players or an additional pick. So the common rumor with the Saints, for example, is the next 3 first-round picks. Their right guard, who they drafted in the first round a couple years ago, who's been terrible, Cesar Ruiz. But again, he was a first-round talent. Maybe a change of scenery helps him. and a third-round pick. So that's the rumor with the Saints, is that's the compensation. That's, from a Saints perspective, that's not that much.
I keep forgetting that Houston's not ran by Bill O'Brien anymore. So, they're actually demanding quality stuff.
No, yeah. The trade compensation would have been a box of Omaha steaks, a 7th-round pick, and a bag of footballs. Bill O'Brien. Well, gentlemen, any parting shots before we wrap up this week's FL Teams Live?
Look, I think we got a lot more to come, because when the Watson thing falls, we're going to see what it is. This is a good time of year for football. I like it. The free agent, signing period gets going, and then we move in toward the draft. I think all three of us have some uncertainty, yet a little bit of hope, right? That's what this time of the year has always given me as a Dolphin fan, that hope that I don't get during the season. So it's good time spinning it out here.
Yeah, I second that. I mean, we had tons of stuff going on with free agency, so I got tons of new content to put out. But I'm glad we did this discussion, because it's just exciting, to talk about the potential of, these players in the upcoming season, especially for both the Jaguars and the Dolphins. I think there's going to be a lot of exciting things, and also with the Saints too, Jeff, with the whole Deshaun Watson situation, and we'll see how that unfolds. But yeah, this was awesome.
For sure. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this Wednesday. Hey, folks, make sure you subscribe to FL Teams everywhere you can. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, probably a few other things I'm not thinking about. Do we have a TikTok? I don't know. Jeremiah has a TikTok, though.
I think Isaac's holding one down. I see FL Teams over there.
All right. Well, then on TikTok too, if you can follow FL Teams, do it. Thank you, Andrew, from the Jag Roar podcast. I said it right that time.
Nice. Thank you,
Jeremiah
sir.
hosts Fins in the Sea. He's also a TikTok extraordinaire. And me, you can check me out on Bolts and Bats in the Bay if you're a Lightning or a Rays fan here on FL Teams, or you can check out my podcast, the Jeff Macolino podcast, very creatively named. For all of us, and remember, every Wednesday we'll be here on FL Teams Live to chat with you about the latest and greatest news, especially when it pertains to Florida sports teams. FL Teams, FL Teams, FL Teams.
Out.
Peace.